Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. For those of you who are familiar with me, welcome back, and for those who are not, my name is Chris. I am a musician based out of the Los Angeles area, and I like to consider myself a menswear enthusiast. So if either of these two things interest you, please feel free to hit that subscribe button so that way you can tune into some of my contents that I will plan on releasing in the future. Now, obviously, I know I'm not the best poster of videos on this channel. I do pride myself on the content I do release, and I hope that you enjoy the content that I release nonetheless. So let's start talking about my TLB Mallorca Artista number 113s. Just before we talk about the shoes themselves, let's just talk about one thing first. Now, some of you may be asking, why didn't I just go straight with Carmina and why did I go with TLB? There are a couple of reasons, and one big one that I have tended to mention in all of my shoe videos is that I have a USB width. That is B as in boy, not D as in David. Meaning that I have a narrower foot than the average population. And so for me, going with a shoe that has an average width compared to my more narrow width, that's just out of the question for me. And so when I talked with Carmina however long ago about inquiring about their shoes, since at that time they only had the New York boutique, now they have the San Francisco boutique, but that aside, when I had consulted with Carmina back at that time, they told me that their narrowest last, the Simpson, is only a USC as in Charlie width. Now, that's, again, having sized my foot up to be a 13B is already tough, because it's one thing to have narrow feet, it's another to have long and narrow feet. US 13 is a UK 12, let's put it that way. So this is where I ultimately drew myself to TLB Mallorca. And I did have a little bit of a contention at first, considering that is like I wanted to understand their widths, and their standard width is F. Then obviously I was like, okay, I really don't want to feel like I'm wearing clown shoes. Check their made-to-order program, their customizable program. Their made-to-order program offers E widths, E as in Edward. And that's where I just said, okay, I need to talk. I need to ask somebody. So I sent in a contact form to TLB, and lo and behold, I have the TLB Tony Obera Barcelo get in touch with me and say, hey, here's what you can do, size up your feet for me and we'll see what we can do. From there, Tony was gracious enough to offer me a D with Goya last, which I'm still eternally grateful for. Muchísimas gracias a ti, Tony. Muchísimas gracias. And from here, it just really kind of blew things up for me. Aside from the fact that, let's consider that the last time I bought these things was 3 years ago at this point. But just to give you all the summary, at the end of the day, I really don't want to have to continue dealing with dress shoes that have excess room. It's an issue I've been having since my teenage years. Now, with all this being said, let's actually start diving into my shoes. Let's start off with aesthetics. Now, let's be honest, there's plenty of reviews out there that talk about the aesthetics of these shoes. So I'm just gonna sum this up as quickly as possible. I mean, heck, there's even a full dissection video out there of these shoes, which was done by Trenton and Heath. And if you guys wanna check that out, yeah, you guys are welcome to check that up here in this corner. Just so I don't miss anything, I do have my notes right here in front of me. And if I do end up diverging, you'll know when that is. So let's just begin with all the basic details. These shoes, I decided to get them made in brown box calf. It is a darker brown color than usual, and TLB likes to source most of their smooth leathers from the Tannerie d'Annonay, obviously a French tannery. And of course it does have 2 rows of tight single needle stitching along the entire thing, so it just looks absolutely clean. And I did mention it earlier that I do have a custom D with Goya last in a size UK 12. And honestly, this is probably my favorite round toe last. Honestly, as compared to my Alden's Hampton last, this is even better. There's just something about how the Europeans get the shape in their shoes, which is just something that is not always achieved by the American shoemakers, or at the very least, when we talk about American shoemakers, I'm gonna mostly reference Allen Edmonds and Alden. Partially because I don't have experience with anyone else, and 2, I also own a pair of each from Allen Edmonds and Alden. And while I'm still on the topic of the toe, the Artista number 113 has a perforated toe cap, meaning that it does have broguing on just the toe cap. And one of the main differences is that while you tend to see shoes with broguing have serrated or pinked edges, this one actually has a very straight cut edge by comparison. So it's a slightly different aesthetic appeal, and honestly, in a way, at least for something with a quarter brogue, as it's known as in the UK, if I'm not mistaken, where only the cap is brogued, it has a much cleaner appearance than having a pinked cap, especially when you compare the fact that the rest of the shoe is going to be much more straight cut, comparatively speaking. Then of course this has a very tightly wrapped heel, and what I got for the sole is a JR sole. Now JR, since, and for those who don't know, JR is Johann Brandenbacher, the famous oak bark tannery in Germany. They've undergone new ownership by Kilger, so the JR branding now has JR by Kilger available on it. All this being said, I do have a JR sole on it, and it has invisible or blind channel stitching. This one kind of goes back and forth with the shoe community, cobblers, and all that. I've heard it said a bunch of different ways, but just to sum up for those who aren't aware, this is where you cut the sole, you cut the outsole to have a lip, and you'll stitch beneath that lip, and then you'll close that lip back up, so it looks as if there's nothing holding that outsole together, but there are stitches holding it together nonetheless. And of course, to top it off, the welting, while I'm on the topic of the outsole, is very close cut with a very nice beveled edge along the waist of the shoe, and that waist does have a nice fiddling to it. Although, when you look at the pictures versus when you see it in person, I expected the fiddle to be a little more aggressive, and at least when I first got it, I didn't think too much of it. It is still a very nice aesthetic to have that fiddle on it, but it is not quite as aggressive as the shadows on the photos make it out to be. But that's just my thoughts. You can feel free to disagree. Now, with this close cut and beveled edge of my TLBs, Trent and Heath mentioned this in the video that I actually mentioned regarding the dissection. And what Trent and Heath had said in their dissection video of the TLBs is that because it is so close cut, doing a resole job might actually be a little more complicated because there's a potential for needing a new welt. That's only because the stitching machine needs to be able to get in and grab the welt. And when it can't grab the welt, understandably, it might turn it into Swiss cheese. So obviously, let's just put it this way, your mileage may vary depending on where you get your shoe taken care of. So from here, let's talk about the feeling on my foot. I do want to open up this section with another thing. And this is going to answer a huge thing that the shoe community always talks about, and that's the lacing. By that, I mean how they close. Because you may have seen my unboxing video, and I'm going to show some B-roll as well. My lacing always closes all the way. Now, this has some contentions because, understandably, leather is a skin, and skin stretches over time. However, I would like to mention that I do have a lower instep, and so even with the shoe inserts that I have, which I will discuss just a little bit more, my feet do not hit the instep just right to actually be able to open it without feeling too snug on my feet, for that matter. Now, with all this being said, these are 1000% my most close-fitting shoes I've ever worn. And I don't say that very lightly because, again, of all the dress shoes, granted I only own 3 pairs right now, 4 if I count my suedes, which I wear so wearily often, then these fit so snug to my feet with a little bit of wiggle room, of course, that it's just such a great feeling. I've never had shoes that fit so tightly to my feet. And as I already had alluded to it, that is with the help of the shoe inserts. Granted that I only use it in my right shoe. Little story time behind that, if I have some more B-roll looking at my left shoe. There is a bit more creasing or rolling that is happening along the vamp. And where I believe that came from is when I decided to wear the left insert in my shoe, and it was and it placed my foot right up against the vamp. I think what happened was that my shoe just was not ready for it. Although it was a good idea to be able to have both feet and the inserts, I think I'm just going to continue putting it in my right foot only. Now, to talk about something else from my unboxing video, my shoes these days, 3 years later nearly, have virtually no heel slip. That does come from a little bit of break-in, and even better, because I have the Artista line, I do have real leather stiffeners and not just leather board. As much as leather board is still leather, leather board is far more like cardboard than it is leather. So leather actually has the flexibility to still move around, even if it's a stiffener per se. And to be totally honest, the fact that there's little to no heel slip these days just makes for an even better shoe feel. And on top of that, because the heels fit so tightly, I thought it was going to be a bigger pain in my butt than I thought. No. These are actually far more comfy than I thought, because when a shoe properly hugs your foot, it actually feels supported. Maybe up until the end of the day where you're probably wanting your shoes off. But there's a bunch of different ways we can go about that. And I will also talk even more about that sort of thought process later in this video as well. Now, before we get to conclusions, I do want to talk really quickly about TLB's made-to-order program, and this is just going to go quick and easy. Now, the nicest thing about this made-to-order process is that it is a cakewalk. The website is made to where you just look, you click on what you want, bada bing, bada boom. Excuse me for taking about 2 seconds to get that out of my mouth. Obviously, depending on the shoe you choose to buy, there will be steps added for whatever shoe you get. So say you have something like my shoe, which is an Oxford. You have the cap, you have the vamp, you have the quarters, and sometimes you'll have the heel. So that means you've got up to four pieces of leather, or at least four different portions of the shoe that you have to worry about customizing the leathers for. And yes, I do mean it when I say customizing the leathers, plural. And even if you don't want something as crazy as that, you can still go with something more conservative like I have here. I mean, it's a customization program. To make an American joke really quickly, it's like Burger King. You can have it your way. To close this little section on the customization program is that there is going to be an upcharge for this whole process. You are getting a different product than what is offered for that is ready to wear. And that is going to come with a slight upcharge. On top of that, you are going to get upcharged for other things that have a slightly higher cost to them, such as a JR sole, among other things. So now let's put a pin in this whole discussion and talk about my whole conclusions regarding what I would now consider my favorite pair of shoes. And before we get there, I have to disclose this main thing, something I alluded to earlier. People, there's no such thing as a perfect product. We all wish there was a perfect product, but it's just super hard to get out there unless you're willing to pay for it. Perfection comes with time, let alone money, and time means someone's labor, usually speaking. You know where that perfection usually comes in at? The bespoke level. Because at the bespoke level, you can really start asking for those details you can't just get from a factory-based shoe. When we're talking a truly bespoke shoe, we're talking something that has been completely handmade. Literally no machines aside from the machine to actually stitch the leather together, insofar as I'm aware. Now, I would consider these my favorite shoes because they really are wonderfully made Goodyear welted shoes from Spain, let alone specifically Mallorca, the island of Mallorca itself. And the Artista line, you can get their shoes ready to wear at, as I last looked it up most recently, 370 euros approximately for ready to wear, or 435 euros approximately for the made-to-order custom program. And my main piece of advice for everyone out there, please, for the love of God, get your foot sized properly. Meaning that if you think you have one size and you've never been properly fitted, especially if you're in the United States, against a Branagh device, I would suggest doing so to make sure that you're getting the actual correct fitting shoe. Not only are you getting the correct length, you're going to get the correct width. The reason I say that is because you should not have to spend more money than you're willing to do so. For me, am I willing to drop more money for my shoes just because I have a unique foot shape? Yes. Really? If I could spend less money, I would. And I'm not saying that because I'm not saying that because I want to cheap out. I'm saying that because if I could stick with the much more, let's call them bargain priced everything, I'd do so. But I'm someone who's looking for a little bit of better quality to work with, and quality comes again at a higher price. And in my opinion, you get high quality leather, you get a toe cap that doesn't crease, and genuinely I've tried, unlike on my Aldens and my Allen Edmonds, the Allen Edmonds of those two being the easiest to crease. That's a story for another day. If you haven't seen one of my other videos, feel free to go check those Allen Edmonds and Alden videos out. And your foot's properly supported, among other reasons that it's just like I wouldn't be able to describe. It's such a different experience for me to be able to wear these shoes as compared to my other two pairs, let alone anything else I've worn over the years that's not a sneaker, of course, or in the UK, a trainer. That just feels comfortable on the foot. And it's a very aesthetically pleasing shoe to top it off. And I like to consider TLB Mallorca a great affordable option that is quality in the shoe market. Affordability is always in the eye of the beholder, and so is quality. But to bring it back to something I always like to discuss, saxophones, because that's something I've been so familiar with over the years. There are 3 levels of instruments, usually speaking: student, intermediate, professional. Student models are just the things you get straight from a factory, basically machine made. Intermediate has a little more handwork to it. Professional is obviously mostly handmade, if not entirely handmade. And of course, cheapest, in the middle, most expensive of the bunch. And as a professional, I only want to use professional quality instruments. Could I use a student quality instrument and make it work? Absolutely. But why am I going to spend, say, for a Yamaha, $2,000 on a Yamaha saxophone, a student saxophone for that matter, when that's probably going to fall apart in a matter of 5 to 10 years, when I could spend that $2,000, maybe 3 times that, on a Selmer Paris saxophone, and have that last a minimum of 30 years, granted that I take care of it. Again, when you care for your things that are quality, they are going to last an entire lifetime. And in addition, professional saxophones just have a certain finesse available to them that would just not be available on a student, let alone an intermediate saxophone. Now, TLB Mallorca as a whole does have a mainline version of their shoes, which, as I briefly mentioned, it does not have a true leather stiffener. It does have leather board stiffeners, if not some other particle board in them. It does lessen the cost a little bit. And it does end up turning the prices down to around 320, 325 euros for ready-to-wear, and 370 euros for the made-to-order program. And keep in mind, all the prices I'm mentioning in this video are those baseline prices for all of their products. These prices come from me sorting out their pages from prices low to high, meaning low is at the top. In addition, the main line has a more streamlined lasting process, meaning that it may not be as snug a fit as the Artista line. Besides that, as far as I'm aware, TLB uses the same exact leathers in all of their shoes. It's just what they do to the insides, what they do to make the shoe, the more specific parts of the process that are slightly different between the mainline and the Artista. Apologies for switching angles on you all so instantly, everyone. My camera was dying and I needed access to an outlet, so I had to flip the whole situation around. But to bring it back to Carmina really quickly, actually, funny enough, they now offer their 3D bespoke last making program. And this could potentially bring me back to them to see what Carmina can offer for me potentially. Of course, because they're making a bespoke last, this does come at a higher cost. I believe Carmina is asking somewhere around $2,000. I know that's not the exact figure, but it's pretty dang close to $2,000 for a fully bespoke last, but it is still made in the Goodyear welting process. So while it is not necessarily a traditionally hand-welted, fully handmade bespoke shoe, it does have the bespoke fit. And of course, who else but Kirby Allison has gotten that insight into their program. So if you want to get more insight on Carmina's 3D bespoke last making program, there is going to be a link to Kirby's video, let alone a little preview on Carmina's website. Does this inherently mean that I will be moving to Carmina? Again, no. If they don't offer me something that I can't afford right now, meaning typically shoes that cost less than $1,000, then it's not going to be worth my time to be able to get a shoe that does not fit my foot. Again, why bother? This is not inherently a judgment call on Carmina. These are just the circumstances I'm left with. I have long, narrow feet. And for everyone who's been out there in the comments section of my shoe videos looking out for me, I very much appreciate it. And the fact of the matter is that I hear you all. With my feet being so long and so narrow, most shoemakers that you all have suggested, let alone ones that I have also found out about, they don't always offer a shoe that's in a size US 13 with a narrower width. Now, all this being said, thank you all for tuning into today's video. I hope you enjoyed everything I had discussed today regarding my shoes. Honestly, this video was, as I've said it multiple times, 3 years in the making, and I do apologize for taking so long. What happened over the last 2 or 3 years was just a sheer, not inherently sheer, but a much more drastic life change. In 2022, I took on more than two karate schools when I was working for my former employer, and I was doing that 4 days a week. So and maybe 5 days a week at one point. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. For me to dress like in an outfit like this every day of the week, when in the evenings I had to get physical, one, it just doesn't make sense, and two, it's like I didn't quite have the funds like always there ready to go. And even now, in 2024, I've opened my own karate business, which I haven't discussed because I haven't posted any videos where I talk about these sorts of things. And that's been taking up a lot of time and money as well. So for me to be able to kind of continue filling you all in on my style journey is not exactly the easiest thing to do. But my hope is that as my business grows, that there's a chance I can kind of come back to this other passion project of mine. And for those interested in knowing what my outfit for today was, I am wearing one of my favorite shirts, especially in the hotter weather, since we're nearing the end of September, early October. Yeah, it's fall season, but it's California, and California, especially in the LA area, doesn't exactly have all 4 seasons. So in this warmer weather, I like to wear my cotton linen shirt from Leadberry. It's a nice yellow color, so this way it goes well with warmer weather. It's not absorbing too much heat. And yeah, it's 70% cotton, 30% linen, and the thing breathes so nicely that I enjoy wearing this. I am also wearing my high-rise Spear & Mackay linen and cotton trousers. These olive-colored trousers. They do have their side tabs, and it is 55% linen, 45% cotton, or it's linen wool. I'm forgetting off the top of my head. In addition, I am also wearing my Kirby Allison Sovereign grade wool socks in a gray color, along with, of course, my TLBs, which you saw in the B-roll. So if you liked today's video, hit that thumbs up button. Heck, if you didn't even like it, feel free to hit that dislike button. If you are interested in seeing more music performances or style videos, maybe even some vlogs, the 2 or 3 other videos that I mentioned that I plan on making in the upcoming future, feel free to hit that subscribe button so you can stay tuned for other videos I plan on posting in the future. And again, all this being said, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Take care, everyone, and see you all soon.